Hello and welcome to another episode of the Whole People Group podcast. Today I am joined by my good friend and our associate Lucy Fleetwood Davis. Lucy is a wellbeing consultant who uses Ayurveda, non-sleep deep rest and solution-focused hypnotherapy to bring people back into balance with her coaching programs and her wellbeing programs. I'm really excited to talk to Lucy today. We've got some great questions. Whole People Group, we recognise that organisational excellence is deeply entwined with the well-being of its people, and our mission is to seamlessly integrate well-being with performance, because we understand that when individuals thrive, so does the entire organisation. Lucy, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and I've been looking forward to talking to you.
Oh, so lovely. What an introduction, Simon. Lovely to be here, and thank you.
I could have spoken for a lot longer. I've known you for a while now. So, Lucy, I think we need to go straight in. You know, we have this short podcast. I mean, I know you. Our listeners don't know you particularly well. Obviously, Whole People Group, we've built this team of people who have got a lot of lived experience. And maybe in a few minutes, you could just tell our listeners a bit about where you've been and some of the challenges and some of the wins that you've had over the years and how you found yourself into this moment right now.
Yeah, of course. So my background is complex PTSD. That was due to having a father who was schizophrenic. So that was quite scary as I grew up with him in my childhood. And I'm 63. So when I was young, we didn't have these terms, you just grow up and you think it's who you are. So I went out into the world, quite a nervous and frightened person, but I was 16, up in London, worked from the age of 14, actually. And I always just pushed through. I've always had that capacity to get up and march and put a smile on my face. So that's been my background. Of course, I just, doing this really quickly. Over the decades, it had an effect on my health. Late 20s, early 30s, married, then divorced. So on my own with 2 children, 10 months and 2.5. Very hard when you're also navigating the effects of post-traumatic stress disorder because it's getting triggered all the time. But at that point in my life, I still didn't know what it was. I still hid it. I got up, marched, and put a smile on my face. So I've had decades of understanding how to bring myself back into balance, because you have to do that to be successful in life and to get on with your responsibilities. And I always hid it. And there are loads of people out there that do this, I'm not the only person. And then as time went by, as I was bringing up my children, I had a lot of physical issues, digestive issues. I wasn't absorbing any nutrients. I became malnourished, dehydrated. I lost all the teeth on one side of my face because I kept having abscesses. Low immune system, caught everything out there. Getting more and more burnt out, more and more absolutely exhausted. It takes time. The body's so resilient, and the mind too. It does take time. And then in my 40s, I learnt the term post-traumatic stress disorder. And somebody, I was having counselling, and somebody said, do you realise this is what you've got? And actually counselling is the worst thing that you could be having. And so that was a journey for me. And then I know I'm going through this very quickly, but we haven't got a lot of time. Basically, at the end of my 40s, as I was moving through my menopause, my children were out. One was training to be a chef, the other had gone to university. And I went for a gap year. And I had some time. For the first time in my entire existence, I had a bit of time. And I was volunteering at different places, and only for a few hours a week. And they were all in nature. So suddenly I was in nature. I was up in the Pyrenees at an off-grid project. I was in Devon at the Schumacher College, and I decided to research what I could do for myself for the digestive issues. And because it got so bad, I was hardly able to eat anything without some kind of symptom. And I came across Ayurveda. I couldn't afford to go and see anybody at that time in my life, and so I just decided to put something together myself. I basically did the Ayurvedic cleanse for 3 months, and at the end of that 3 months I was completely healed. I was over in the Pyrenees. I walked the Camino back to Santiago before getting a plane back home, and I had to eat anything that came my way, and I was completely cured. No diarrhea, no pain, no nothing. So that healed me of that. And it also regulated my nervous system. And so I was having no PTSD attacks. I was so calm and so blissed out. I've never known anything like that in my life. I arrived back into England, London, and it hits you. It hits you, our Western culture, when you've been living out in the Pyrenees at an off-grid project. And I realised that the PTSD actually hadn't been cured. It's just that my system had regulated through the Ayurvedic approach. But I found solution-focused hypnotherapy through somebody in my Buddhist group. And they did something called the rewind technique, and they said, I can cure you of this. And so they gifted me, so I arrived back, I had £10 in my bank account when I got back to England, and they gifted me something like 15 weeks. It's quite incredible. And they cured me. So I went on to train in Ayurveda and solution-focused hypnotherapy. And all the way through those decades, you know, I've done other work, I've been a coach, I've always been holding a space for people because of naturally people gravitate towards you. There's something invisible about understanding. You know, like if it's grief, you know if you're talking to that person whether they get it or not. If it's depression, you know whether they get it or not. It doesn't matter what the qualifications are. It doesn't matter what they say. You just know. Yeah, I'll be quiet now.
Well, Lucy, I think number one, I think there's a book in there that you need to write. And I mean, you know, in such a short space of time, what I'm hearing is, and I know because some of my clients and some of the clients we both have is PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, to be that far out of balance. And I'm teeing up your program here to be out of balance. And I know we're going to talk about balance. For you then to find yourself back into the middle and be healed is actually quite miraculous, isn't it? Because the one thing I know is, having been through active addiction and depression, is there's a hopelessness that comes when you're stuck in these cycles that you never think you're going to get out. So I just want to really acknowledge you for being out and to be sitting here right now. And I know you probably have, like all of us, all the normal everyday human mind struggles, but for you to be here helping other people, and I know there'll be someone listening that is probably maybe experiencing anxiety or panic or complex, you know, these are the symptoms of complex post-traumatic stress disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, I think it's more than a bold claim you're making, because you're sat there right now and you're the embodiment of someone who's moved through that. You know, we've had really big discussions along the last few months. My next question is, what's the big issue we are facing at the moment? And I talk about our culture. Let's go into the center of London, right? Let's go like corporate culture, working culture, that part of the culture, right? Like let's go into the center of the financial district, the legal part, the professional services. What's the big problem that we're facing at the moment?
Yeah, well, it's mental health and burnout, and it's because we're pushing our capacity. There's nothing wrong with pushing our capacity. It's fantastic to push out from balance right to the very edges to see what you can do to achieve great things. That's peak performance. It's amazing. Brilliant to do that. But what our culture hasn't understood is that you need to be able to come back into balance in order to push out again. You can't just keep on pushing. If you keep on pushing, you'll get away with it for a certain amount of time. And that certain amount of time can be years, actually. It could be a decade or more, depending on who you are and what your health, you know, what your body and mind are like. But there will come a point when the system starts to break down physically and mentally. And that's, of course, when we get all the burnout symptoms. That's when we get anxiety. That's when we get depression. So just in a nutshell, there's a mental health continuum. So although my background is PTSD, there's a lot of similarity. That's a trapped memory that's causing you trauma and stress. But the mental health continuum is, you know, goes from good to poor. And so as soon as we get some stresses, when we go to sleep at night, we have REM sleep. And that REM sleep, that part of the sleep cycle, processes the stresses of the day. So we wake up the next day, hey, I'm great, I'm fine, I can push out to the edge again. What's happening in our culture is that we're pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and the brain can't process all the stress that arrives in it each day. So you wake up with like an imaginary bucket in the head that's got stress in it that's not processed. Once you've got unprocessed stress in the brain, you get symptoms. Starts out mild because it's just a little bit. So a little bit of anxiety, could be anger, tends to be anger, anxiety, or depression. And Ayurveda explains this. There are different types of people with different types of temperaments and constitutions. One type would tend to go towards the anxiety, one type towards the depression, and the other type towards the anger and burnout. But all types can get burnt out. I feel that I'm talking too much here, actually.
No, you're bang on. No, there's because I think this needs to be explored, and I know we only have 15 minutes today, but this needs to be explored because I come from a world of professional sports, and I think that there is an understanding now in sports of you go out and then you come back into the center, right? There's also support structures in place in professional sport. When you do go too far, there's a physio and a psychologist, but what I've uncovered in the last sort of 5 years is the corporate world. There's the emphasis on rest and recovery, the emphasis on sleep and nutrition. I mean, it's getting much, much better now, but we
Yeah,
call these high performance cultures, right? Now,
yeah,
for me, coming from elite level sport, I think that they are so far removed from for true high performance cultures
yeah,
because it's in professional sport, you train way more than you play. You
yeah,
warm up, you stretch, you have good sleep, you know that your nutrition is important, you've
yeah,
got a physio, the coach is taking care of you. And in, let's say, the legal industry where I do quite a lot of my work, it's it's go, 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 go. You take your clients out at night, you drink alcohol, you don't get correct amount
yeah,
of sleep. Everybody indulges over dinners and things like that. And I think the food is probably not consciously chosen. And the stress, normal amount of stress from the stakeholders comes in that they need more and more and more, which I think is healthy.
yeah,
But for me, it's just go, go, go. And then this is the issue is I think industries were set up that when someone burns out, you can just find a new one to come in.
yeah,
And then we've got this destruction pile of bodies almost where there's chronic illness,
yeah,
depression, cancer, heart attacks, addictions. And then you look at the more sort of social consequences, divorce, domestic violence. And
yeah,
all of it is because there's too much stress and we're out of balance. And I think that what I'm hearing from you is what I've seen in sport is we need that capacity to come back into the middle and sleep properly because that's when things get processed and then we
agree.
can go again, right? And actually the great news here, isn't it, Lucy, is you can go for much, much longer
Yeah,
and you can perform at an even higher level. So I think a lot of people think that if you're in balance, you're not going to get the high performance, but actually
that's
you're going to
it.
get better performance for longer.
I agree. People associate the word balance with just sort of happy clappy music, woohoo, not really doing very much, just being an imbalanced man, very sort of hippie approach to
Mm.
life, if you like. And it's not that. It's about, like Ayurveda explains, and Western science does as well. The body has to keep returning to homeostasis. It does it every night when it goes to sleep. The things we consume through food, but also through our senses, are constantly pushing us out of homeostasis or back into it. We need to understand that. We need to understand how to support the body to come back into homeostasis. Within the corporate world, unlike perhaps the world of sport, if you go, well, I'm old enough to go back to the 80s. I remember Only Fools and Horses and the big brick phone and the financial, that kind of era. So the 80s was very much, the big shoulder pads. Dallas was on the television from America. It was all about work hard, play hard. That's all you did. That's what life was. Work hard, play hard, work hard, play hard. And
Yeah.
so it became a cultural thing. Now, if you're not playing hard as well as working hard, there's something wrong with you. You're probably not quite the right type for the club. So we've got that culture, and we're still operating from that culture, even though we know it's not working for us. So yeah,
So Lucy, so tell me the work that you do, the Ayurveda, the non-sleep deep rest,
yeah,
and the solution focused. How does that work approach this
yeah.
problem that we're identifying?
Okay, so there's like two strands to this problem. You've got the people who've been going for so long, they're completely burnt out. They've got major depression, possibly feeling suicidal, but they're at that extreme end. And then you've got people at the other end of the continuum who are just starting out, and maybe they're just feeling a bit stressed and they're feeling a bit anxious. And if it's Generation Z, they're thinking, I'm not putting up with that. And so you've got a lot of cultural stuff going on within organisations because of that. So what I can do is I can bring together the Ayurveda, which addresses both mental and physical health. It is tailored to the individual because it recognises different people have different constitutions, different needs, different psychological needs as well as physical needs. And then when I bring that together with non-sleep deep rest, actually Ayurveda comes from a tradition that was already using non-sleep deep rest, and they called it Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra is a state of mind. Non-sleep deep rest creates a state of mind. Hypnotherapy creates a state of mind. They all create the same state of mind, and you can do incredible things when you're in that state of mind. You can come back to balance. You can practice peak performance. You can heal yourself. You can support the body to be in homeostasis. There's so much you can do in that state. So that's what I do, really. I bring together I'm trained in solution-focused hypnotherapy. Some people prefer that format, but I'm also trained in Ayurveda and Yoga Nidra. Some people prefer that format, but it's doing the same thing because you're always bringing in the solution-focused conversation. So that primes the brain. The NSDR takes the brain into the right state so that it can embed what you're priming it with into the subconscious. And as we all know, sort of 95% of what we're doing is coming from subconscious patterns, so we can change those. So I can both help people manage stress and have a preemptive health plan, but I can also support people who have moved along that continuum. I can help them to come back into balance, and the symptoms will go away. But it takes time, depending on how far along you are, and you have to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I really like that. And the way that I relate to that is when I learned about the nervous system, there being we have the autonomic nervous system, and then you've got the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic.
Yeah.
Obviously, the sympathetic nervous system is this fight or flight stress, which has evolved for us to leave the cave and go and take down the animal to feed the family. It's like healthy stress, and we need to spend time there. But we've spent no time, or almost no time, in the other part, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, which they call rest and digest, right? And it feels to me that your work takes people into that part of the nervous system. Absolutely. Where all the healing happens. I mean, my teacher said that if you've got a cut and you leave it, your body will heal it, right? It's amazing and it's a miracle. But if you're in a state of stress and you're focused outside of yourself and you're stressed, it will heal slower, because all that intelligence is being drawn from there to be able to focus you on getting the deal or winning the game or whatever it is. So we need to be able to stop. And it's, I mean, we could have a bit of a laugh about it, really. I mean, we call it well-being, don't we? And I wonder whether people really understand. I mean, my big journey has been to learn how to just be and trust that so much healing and health. And if I just sit here, this is why meditation's been so powerful, and non-sleep deep rest, and these, if I can sit and be, then there's an intelligence that takes care of myself for me, right? And I don't even need to really do anything, just plonk a bit of water in my mouth and to be able to let go. But we are, it's decades to learn how to go.
So true. Yeah. No, that's so beautifully put. That's really beautifully put. It is, and that's all I do. I help people come back into balance, and the body and the mind does it for itself. And of course, when I say back into balance, you're rebalancing the nervous system, but you're rebalancing the dopamine cycles. There's so much that you're rebalancing in this work, and it's actually very simple. And just for anybody out there who's listening who has got PTSD, has got trapped trauma, just to say that there's lots. In the West, we test things and we research things for decades before we decide what's good, what's going to work. So at the moment, there's a lot of people using CBT and the talking therapies for PTSD, and it's the worst thing because actually it re-triggers you. And what happens is that the body, the brain, it's trapped. That memory is trapped in a part of the brain that's going to recreate all the biochemistry of the event. So you're just going to feel really shit all over again. Whatever that is for you. Sorry, I shouldn't swear, but whatever that is for you, you're just gonna, because it's the only way to really. Sometimes swearing really allows you to say how awful a thing is.
Oh yeah. Everybody swears. It's all good. So before my final question, I'm going to add a question here. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot here because, and I know you did a lot of preparation for the questions, and it's coming through in the podcast. What does someone do right now if they're listening to this podcast and they are burnt out or burning out? What does someone do in the next 24 hours, 1 week? What's the first thing that they should do aside from ring Whole People Group or their doctor or GP? What do they need to know and do?
Keep it simple. NSDR. Find a lovely script you like on YouTube, or give me a ring. I'll give it to you for free.
Nice.
You just do that every morning, every evening. If there's only one thing you can do, begin with that.
Brilliant. And I would say, I'm going to put in there that I think that I had PTSD, definitely PTSD coming out of addiction in childhood from a childhood trauma. And I would say the most powerful thing I've done is have baths, do yoga nidra, and go for walks. It's
Yeah,
been the most healing thing, is just to give myself that time to be able to connect to nature,
yeah,
have really nice baths, and even with essential oils and all these, that more feminine side of life that men don't really like to get into touch with. It's been the most amazing thing, and having a good wife helps there too. So Lucy, last question. It's been a brilliant podcast.
yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot again. You've got you're in a lift, or you're on your deathbed. You're a Buddhist, so we spend lots of time we spend lots of time talking about what we're going to do on our deathbed. You've got one message you can leave to the world. You have a sentence or two sentences that you can leave. Everything else gets lost in time, but you get one thing that stays for people. What's the core? What do you want people to know?
Okay, I think, yeah, I've got so many answers. I think this would be the core one. If you're out there feeling really rubbish with a mental health sort of stigma hanging over you, I want you to know there's nothing wrong with you. You just need to know how to come back into balance.
Lucy, it's been a joy. We're going to have to do a longer one of these, because you and I, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us and with the world. We're excited. Whole People Group is really excited to have you on board. And I think that if I take, where our culture's been, we make no, we don't hide behind our opinion on where the culture's been, in terms of we've been sending the wrong people in to try and sort things out. And I use this as an example. We've currently, or our culture sends white men who have studied menopause in a lab to go and deal with menopausal women. That's our culture. Where Whole People Group is coming in is we are gathering up the wisdom of lived experience. And in just 20 minutes today, it's just emanating from you. And I think, you're so ready to go and share your wisdom with the world. And there's plenty of people who are burning out, depressed, addicted, suicidal, and all of it, isn't it? All of it is because we're coming out, we're spending too long out of balance.
Absolutely. Absolutely.